This is Democracy Watch. So, Mark, Trump and Mike Johnson have announced a bill specifically intended to deceive their own voters. Can you talk about what that was?
Yeah. So Mike Johnson, remember, found himself in the uncomfortable position of Marjorie Taylor Greene wanting to kick him out of the speakership. So he did what every cowardly Republican speaker does, which is he then went to Mar-a-Lago and was like, Mr. Trump, what ridiculous thing can I say or do to humiliate myself to be in your good graces? And Donald Trump, as he always does, was happy to oblige. And he made Mike Johnson announce that they are going to introduce a bill to ban non-citizens from voting in next year's election. Well, guess what? It is already a crime for non-citizens to vote in federal elections. So Mike Johnson made a fool out of himself, which I guess is the small price to pay for making a fool out of himself, I guess, every day?
Also on the docket, making crime illegal, I think, is what they're going to do. Making Mark,
this what they were going to do an entire week on appliances. By the way, and I'm not making this up, they were doing an entire appliance week about dishwashers and dryers.
They saw the interminable infrastructure week that never panned out during the Trump administration, and they told themselves, hold my beer. And then they embarrassed themselves further with an appliance week, and they can't even get appliance week done. They can't even save our gas stoves. And
they had to cancel appliance week. They canceled appliance week.
Putting our gas stoves in jeopardy yet again. Mark, for posterity here, because we hear this claim over and over and over, can non-citizens or undocumented immigrants vote in federal elections?
No, actually, whether they are undocumented or documented, they cannot vote in federal elections. There is a specific federal statute. I tweeted this out. Democracy Docket has written about this. It is 18 USC section 611 for those of you at home who want to go read it. And it says in no uncertain terms that only citizens can vote in federal elections. And it is a crime. It is a crime for non-citizens to vote in federal elections. There have been a handful of places where there has been talk about non-citizens voting in very local elections, villages, a village in Vermont, I think, with a few hundred people thought about doing it or tried to do it and it got blocked. But when it comes to any of the elections that you all are paying attention to, certainly all the federal elections and the statewide elections, non-citizens cannot vote and they do not vote.
And so they're taking something that is already a crime and just making it a crime still. That's the whole
right,
goal
which is
here.
like the ultimate Donald Trump ask of Mike Johnson. It is like literally Donald Trump has only two speeds. Let me ask for something that is nonsensically impossible or nonsensically already happened.
Yeah, or nonsensically illegal. We can't forget about that one too. You had mentioned Democracy Docket. This has obviously been covered in Democracy Docket. And for those watching right now, if you want to support the invaluable work that Mark and his team do and also stay up to date on everything that's happening right now in the legal system, please make sure to sign up for Democracy Docket. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Mark, what does it say about Trump and Republicans' disdain for their own voters that they are spending time and energy prohibiting something that is literally already prohibited?
Look, I mean, you and I joked about appliance week, but it is the same disdain, whether it's appliance week or it is coming up with a anti-voting bill that doesn't do anything. It's the same disdain, right? They just assume that they can come up with things that may sound good on Fox talking points, and that their voters won't pay any attention to the details. That their voters won't bother to look and say, hey, is this already illegal? Their voters won't look and say, hey, is this even a problem? Is this even something that we are coming across? They assume that they can spoon feed their voters disinformation and misinformation and play on their prejudices and their fears. And, if I were a Republican voter, which I'm not, I'd be frankly offended by that. It is speaking down to, and frankly, sort of the joke is on the voters, right? I mean, Donald Trump and Mike Johnson, you have to imagine, behind closed doors are chortling about how they're going to sell something so stupid, like, for example, selling a Bible. Donald Trump selling a Bible. And it's just like it's like the legislative grift.
Right. And what makes this even worse, talking about the legislative grift of it, is that they actually had the opportunity to rectify this issue of the border, and they chose not to, because Donald Trump himself took a bill that was negotiated by conservative Republican James Lankford. This isn't Mitt Romney, right? This isn't Susan Collins or Lisa Murkowski. This is conservative Republican James Lankford, did the bidding of his own party because they had a willful negotiating partner in Joe Biden, and negotiated the most conservative border bill that you could possibly imagine, with no inclusion of comprehensive immigration reform. It was just border security. It was exactly what Republicans wanted. And Donald Trump decided to kill it because he didn't want to lose this as an issue. And now they're continuing to bear down on this same issue that, again, would have been solved if not for Donald Trump himself.
Yeah. And again, it goes to this idea that Donald Trump and the House Republicans in particular, but the Senate Republicans as well, have, that they can perpetually lie to their voters, and the joke is on the voters.
Yeah,
that they believe that there is no scheme or scam that they cannot pull over on their voters. There is no grift that they cannot pull over on their voters. There is no limit to how much lying Donald Trump can get away with. And that is a real threat to our democracy.
Yeah.
It is a threat to the future of free and fair elections, and it is an insult to the millions of voters who vote for the Republicans.
So we already know that it's against federal law for non-citizens to vote in federal elections, but does it ever occur? Like, we know that Trump claimed that 3 to 5 million illegal votes cost him the popular vote in 2016. So it's clear that unfounded claims of millions of non-citizen votes is going to be one of the main conspiracies on the right for yet another presidential election. And this time, people with huge platforms like Elon Musk, for example, are promoting these conspiracies to an audience of tens of millions of Americans. So what advice do you have for Democrats, for nonpartisan election officials, or for the mainstream media on how to combat these unfounded conspiracies and to make sure that Americans understand the truth about their elections?
Okay, so first and foremost, listen clearly. There is virtually no election fraud in this country. There is, within that virtually none, there is even less of fraud or errors committed where you have non-citizens voting. Okay, you're talking about, I think the Brennan Center or some group did a study in 2016 that looked at over nearly 24 million votes and found 30 instances of potential, of suspected, of maybe non-citizen voting. And when you drill into
wouldn't even swing like a high school like student government election.
Right. And when you drill into those, first of all, you find that most of those actually were not non-citizens. But in the handful of instances, they are always mistakes. And they are usually mistakes, by the way, on the part of the election officials. An election official tells bad information to someone who doesn't know whether or not they're allowed to vote. That oftentimes happens, by the way, with people who are disqualified because of a felony conviction. They are misled by election officials who don't know better. And that's what happens. But it is vanishingly rare. One of the tools that we use to show how vanishingly rare, in a twist of irony, is the Heritage Foundation, the grandfather of all Trump, conservative information, the people behind Project 25. They started several years ago a database with much fanfare of all of the election fraud that they say takes place in the country. And they assumed that they were going to fill this database with thousands and thousands of instances. Instead, it has become an embarrassment for them because there are so few instances in the Heritage Foundation's database. The Trump endorsing Heritage Foundation shows that this is virtually never happening. So look, don't let the misinformation and disinformation win. Don't let the Republican effort to demonize people who have no interest in voting in elections. These folks are coming to this country for work. They are coming to this country to avoid political and personal persecution. The last thing they want to do is do something like voting that's going to get them deported. So, don't believe these lies.
Perfectly put. And of course, all of that underscores the need for news outlets that that convey accurate information, and so that's exactly what Democracy Docket is. So for those watching right now, if you haven't yet signed up, please sign up for Democracy Docket. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Teller Cohen.
I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.